Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. It is Tuesday. It is 4 p.m. ET, and we are so thrilled that you have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. I'm your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 15, going on 16 novels of suspense. My current book is One Wrong Word, which is now also out in a gorgeous trade paperback edition. And my brand new book, All This Could Be Yours, comes out this time next year. So you will hear about it when the time comes. But today we are here to, I was going to say talk about, but I'm going to say give a standing ovation to the absolutely terrific page turner, a marvelous novel called The Puzzle Box by the equally fabulous Danielle Trussoni, who joins us here today from San Miguel in Mexico. We're so happy that Danielle is here. I have to tell you all, and when I look over here, I'm looking at the comments. I see Shannon here already, and Deborah Press, and Kathy Lanigan, and Hey Diane Dick. I have to tell you that I'm a massive fan of Danielle. I'm talking about her like she's not here. I'm a massive fan of Danielle. She is a genius. This book is so brilliant. I absolutely could not put it down. On so many levels, it's wonderful. Philosophically, contemporarily, technically, it's beautiful. And it made me think also about how reading a book and writing a book are like creating a puzzle piece by piece, step by step. You can't hurry. You can't skip to the end if you're at the beginning. You have to carefully, step by step, unlock the secrets of the novel, whether you're writing it or whether you're reading it. And as I was reading The Puzzle Box, I kept wanting to read the gorgeous writing, but then I couldn't wait to find out what happened. And it crossed my mind, that's like a puzzle box. You can't hurry it. You just have to take it one gorgeous step at a time. Danielle, congratulations. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And thank you for writing this absolutely amazing book. Are you a puzzle fan?
I am not a puzzle genius. I am a puzzle fan. I'll make the distinction. But first of all, I just want to say, Hank, thank you for having me on. I'm a fan of yours too. And it means a lot to me that I'm here. I am not a puzzle genius, but I love Wordle. I love jigsaw puzzles. And we'll get into this later, but I brought a real puzzle box to show people. And this is a Japanese puzzle box. And I love trying to open this, which is really challenging. I don't know if anyone can see it.
Show us that little sliding thing one more time.
Okay, so this one, it takes 21 steps to open it. And let me see if I can get, and the steps are very small. I don't know if you saw that tiny little movement. So it's very subtle. And the rest of the box is completely smooth, right? So finding those spots that you can push open and do it in the right order is how the box is solved, and the top pops off. So I did that, and I put something inside, a little treasure inside, and now I have to try to get it out.
I would no more have the patience to do that in a million years, and yet I would try, and yet I would try. Where did that come from?
That came from Hakone, Japan, which is in the book. I went there. I mean, we're going to talk about all of this, I know, but I went there to do research, and I went to one of the old, they're not really factories, like workshops where puzzle boxes are made from wood from Hakone, and I bought that there.
Quite astonishing. I mean, this is, well, we'll come back to that in 1 second because there's so much to talk to you about today. Let me just say to you quickly, Tori T says, love the puzzle box. Someone else was saying, Kathy says that puzzle box looks awesome. I wonder how long it takes anyone to solve it. How long does it take?
So I have instructions, and it took me about 25 minutes. It's hard. With instructions.
Wow.
Because even with the instructions, you have to push it just the right way. If it's too far over or it's not far enough over, then it locks up and you have to sort of rejigger it and redo it. So they're very finicky.
And Diane says, I would love to see the boxes being made. That is fabulous too. And you really weaponize a puzzle box in this fabulous book. All those little things that Danielle was saying, you have to do it just right or else becomes part of the marvelousness
Totally.
Absolutely terrific novel. If you are new to A Mighty Blaze, let me welcome you to today's event. A Mighty Blaze was started 5 years-ish ago by the marvelous powerhouse team of Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt to sort of keep the writing community together, keep the reading community together, to introduce you to your new favorite authors. I hope if you have not read Danielle Trussoni, I hope today will be a pivotal day, a final puzzle piece in your fanship for Danielle Trussoni, or whatever I'm trying to say, because she is great. Sometimes you'll be meeting your favorite authors, and I see from the contents of the comments that she is already some of your favorite authors, just like she is for me. So welcome. Let me tell you a little bit about our author. Danielle Trussoni is the New York Times, USA Today, and internationally best-selling author of 8 books, including The Ancestor, Angelology, this is the 15th time I've said that today, and Angelopolis, all New York Times notable books, and The Puzzle Master, chosen by the Washington Post, Barnes & Noble, and Crime Reads as one of the best thrillers of 2023. Recently, 2 of her books appeared on the Best Books Since 2000 list, compiled by the authors of the New York Times Book Review, and that is amazing. Her debut, Falling Through the Earth, a memoir about her relationship with her father, was selected by the New York Times as one of the best 10 books of the year. She's been featured on 60 Minutes, Time Magazine, and has received cover reviews by the New York Times and the Chicago Tribune. Danielle has been the chair jurist for the Pulitzer Prize in Fiction and was the Dark Matters columnist for the New York Times Book Review for 5 years before leaving to write fiction full-time. Her work has also appeared in The Guardian, Vogue, and Tin House, among other publications. You can find her on Insta at Danielle Trussoni and her website, danielletrussoni.com. So we will take your questions at the end of the interview, as always, and we will spin the wheel of fun for you to win a copy, your very own copy of the puzzle box, not to be missed. Danielle, tell us a little bit about the book, and then we'll get to some inside scoop.
So the book is, it centers around a character named Mike Brink, who is, as you probably guessed from the title, an ingenious puzzle solver. And he's invited to Japan by the Emperor of Japan to open the Dragon Box. This box was constructed 150 years ago by the Emperor Meiji. And inside that box is a secret, one that everyone in the imperial family has either been trying to get or hide. And so every year of the dragon, which is every 12 years, they invite the world's best puzzle solver to Tokyo to try to open it. The only problem is that it's completely weaponized, as you said earlier. There's booby traps and there's all sorts of things that happen when you try to open the box. And every puzzle solver who has tried to open it has died. So Mike Brink, that's the hero, our ingenious puzzle solver, has a big task ahead of him, a very scary task, but he's wired in a way that he can't really say no. So he goes to Japan and all hell breaks loose.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because as I keep saying, and as I marveled at every page, this book is an intricate puzzle box in itself, step by step, piece by piece. And one of the pieces that you use so brilliantly is motivation. Because if there's a puzzle box that nobody's tried to open for 175 years, or however long it was, every time someone tries to open it, they die. You know, you and I are not going to say, well, yeah, good idea, I'm going to try that. And you have created in this character, Mike Brink, who I love, and who, if you meet him, you will love him, there's a specific reason. It's not just because he wants to, but because he almost has to. Can you talk a little bit about why that is?
Sure. So this character was not always a puzzle genius. He was, at 17 years old, he was a promising football star, and he was hit hard on the field and had and received, trauma to his brain. And he developed something called savant syndrome, which not a lot of people know what this is, but it's a real medical disorder. About 50 people, only 50 people in the world actually have been diagnosed with it, where the brain's response to trauma is a kind of hyperplasticity. And the person who has this disorder develops a very specialized and extraordinary ability to do something. So, for example, when I was doing research about savant syndrome, I read about a man who could learn a foreign language like Korean in a week fluently after having this traumatic brain injury. And another guy who had no interest in music, but when he woke up with this disorder, he sort of immediately felt a compulsion to play the piano. And then over the next few weeks, he started playing. And within 6 months, he was composing music and playing professionally. So there's just this response that I find fascinating, that our brain, if changed slightly, can allow us to do these things. So anyway, Mike Brink has this condition. And as you said, he's someone who can't really say no to the things that you and I would refuse. When there's a challenge like this, he has to do it. It's something that keeps his brain chemistry even and allows him to sort of be in the normal world. His day job is as a puzzle constructor for the New York Times Games page, right? And he's constantly going off to like pie reciting competitions. I don't know if you know what that is, but that's where you can recite all the pie places into the tens of thousands. I think the world record is something like 114,000 pie places, right? That someone can.
Who would know if that was even right? No,
right. I know. How would you know? But people actually stay up all night, like watching, which I just find fascinating. That not only that someone can do this, but second, that people actually like go and watch for 18 hours. But anyway, this is this character's skill. So he is kind of a perfect vehicle for solving mysteries that involve puzzles or ciphers or any kind of mysterious pattern.
Well, it's wonderful as an author to have someone for whom it's logical, if they look at a map at Kyoto, for instance, at one moment, that they can navigate around Kyoto because that he remembers that. On the other hand, one of the things that endears us to Mike Brink, who is like a superhero in some ways, is that he kind of wishes he were just a regular guy, and that he's searching for normalcy. And the question is, would he want to give that up? And it makes us think about how our brains work and how much we don't know about that, and almost how little control we may have over it.
True. And it's also, it also made me think when I was writing about him, what I would do, right? If I could take a medication to change or alter my impulses. It's not the healthiest thing to sit alone in a room for 5 hours a day writing, right? And manically creating imaginary worlds. I love doing it. But if I could alter that and do something that was maybe more lucrative or more social, or would allow me to have more relationships, would I do it? I don't know. It's a question. Would we change ourselves to be?
Do you remember Flowers for Algernon, the short story?
Yes.
That's a very cautionary tale about doing that. So in the most cinematic of arrivals, Mike is offered a trip to Japan to be the one who tries to open the dragon box. It's the 12th year, the year of the dragon, and you have to open it within a certain amount of time. This ticking clock aspect that you have, we're talking about the puzzle box, this fabulously unputdownable book by Danielle Trussoni. You have this ticking clock throughout that he has to open the box. If he dies, he's not going to succeed. He has a certain amount of time, and he's not alone in his desire to get this box. Can you talk a little bit about the stakes for the box, what's behind it, how it was created, why it's so important? And did you know that from the beginning as you wrote it, or did that evolve?
So I knew it from the beginning. I knew that the box had to hold something extraordinary inside, but I also knew that it had to move fast, right? You can't spend 2 weeks trying to open a box. And also, I don't think it's giving too much away to say that the box itself is actually, Brink opens it within the first third of the book. And the mystery unfolds across Japan. It sends him sort of on a secondary puzzle, mystery to get the answer of the question of what's inside. So yeah, I knew that those stakes had to be very high. Also, there's a historical element to this. The box was constructed 150 years ago by the Emperor of Japan, Emperor Meiji. And at that time, Japan was going through huge changes. It was opening up to the world, and there were a lot of changes to the monarchy. the samurai, there's a sort of subplot of these two women who are descendants of a famous samurai clan, and their family has wanted what's in that box. So they are opposing Brink, and they're kind of, one of them, they're two sisters, one of them is guiding him, and the other one is after the contents of the box. And that dynamic, I think, makes it feel dangerous. And so, yes, there was a lot that I planned to do in terms of, getting them moving across Japan, raising the stakes, and bringing in that historical element to make it feel like there was a lot that these people wanted from the box.
And it doesn't just feel dangerous. I mean, it is dangerous. You are holding your breath through the entire book, wondering if this is going to work and who will prevail. It's also on so many levels wonderful. One of the several levels that I love, and we'll get to the others in a minute, is again how our brains work. I mean, Mike's brain is altered by something that he couldn't have predicted. It was a surprise, and he gets this whether it's a gift or not. The samurai women have been trained, their brains have been trained in a certain way, and so their brains are altered as well. And then the other faction of people in the search also have a training or a brain or a being or a presence that gives them another way of looking at the world. Can you talk a little bit about that triangular balance?
Sure. It sounds so cerebral when you talk about it that way. Yeah, because it is, I guess it is a little bit, but it's also I feel like there's a real physicality to it too, because of the mechanical nature of the puzzle. But so the third point on that triangle is Mike Brink's nemesis, who is a man named Jameson Sedge, who I don't want to give too much away about The Puzzle Master, which is the other book. I have a copy here, so I'm going to hold that up. So these books can be read separately, but the characters appear, in both of them, some of the same characters. There's an element of artificial intelligence in this book, and sort of my nightmare of what artificial intelligence could become, which is a consciousness that infuses all of our devices, all of the systems that are computerized, buildings, and so on, in a way that can surround us and trap us, and we can be under surveillance and all of this stuff. And this one character, Jameson Sedge, sort of surrounds Mike Brink as he's on his quest.
I mean, it's wonderful because it's all, I mean, you're so right about talking about the physicality of the book, because it's sometimes it's a trap in clever puzzle thrillers that they're all very internal. And this is not like that. This is just completely not that. This is an international chase for a treasure with every one of the exciting things that more than you could possibly imagine happening along the way. And it is set completely gorgeously and immersively in the country of Japan, a lot of it. How do you know so much about Japan? And how did you, I mean, currently and in the past, the Japanese history is luscious throughout. We'll talk about that in a minute. How do you know so much about Japan to take us on this very cinematic and visual, fast-paced tour of the country on this treasure hunt?
I lived in Japan for 2 years in my 20s, and I lived in a very small village, 45 minutes by bus to like the nearest medium-sized town. And so I was for a large part, most of the time alone. I was teaching English in a high school. And so I spent a lot of time getting to know the culture, learning the language. I don't speak Japanese anymore, but then I could get around. I was studying martial art. I was spending time learning about Japanese cooking and all of the elements of Japanese culture that I just fell in love with. And so this gave me a real platform, I think, upon which to build this book. I don't think that you can just go and do a flurry of research in 6 months and really, I mean, some people can, some people are very good at this, but for me, I needed to live there. I wouldn't be confident enough to write a book completely set in an Asian country without having had, without living there and knowing people and really being immersed in that culture. That said, it's been 20 years since I've lived there. So I went back to Japan in March of 2023 after I had a rough draft of this book. And then I went to all of the places that are in the book, and I kind of like took a look around, took some pictures, made sure that it worked. And interestingly enough, for those people who are like me, who like to go to the place that they're writing about before they actually finalize it for their book, I found that some of the places I originally wanted to write about didn't work once I got there.
Why? How?
The physicality was wrong. Like there was in Kyoto, there's a very famous castle called Nijo Castle, which was a samurai. There was a lot of history of samurai in that castle. And I thought, oh, great. This is going to be a perfect place for these sisters to have some connection. And I got there and it was impenetrable, huge. It wasn't as sort of visually stunning as I thought it was going to be. And so it's interesting, if you do research online, sometimes for me anyway, I fill in a lot of my imagination, but once you get there, you can really see if it's going to work or not. So I went there, with my outline, and I ended up just crossing off a couple chapters and putting a couple more in. And it was a great trip, but it really helps.
You always get more when you go see it.
Oh my God. So much more.
You captured it so beautifully, not only the tall bamboo forests and how cold it was and what the landscape looks like, but how people's attitudes and their expressions and their dance, not dance, but just how their posture is the word I'm searching for so unsuccessfully. Not to mention the food that made me completely hungry throughout, and the manners and the politics. And I do think that also, well, first of all, let's talk about history. I always learn something when I read your books. I always do, sort of, and I don't realize how much smarter I feel until I'm after the book and I think, wow, I never would have just read a book to tell me about that. But now I know a lot. How do you know so much about the political history of Japan? And you use it so gorgeously to mirror the past and focus us toward the present as well.
Well, that was all research in books, obviously. I didn't study Japanese history in school or when I was in Japan, but I was really particularly interested in the Japanese imperial family and their dynasty, right? So there's a lot in this book about the history of the Japanese monarchy, how there's a myth that 2,000 years ago, a sun goddess named Amaterasu bequeathed the right to rule Japan to this one family that's still on the throne. They are the longest sitting imperial family in the world. And then there's all of this, it seems like it's getting really in the weeds, but it does all play out in the book. These 8 empresses who were from that family who ruled. And then there's the modern family where, there's the emperor and the empress, they have one child, a young woman. And all of these elements that, are sort of folded in, play out in the conclusion and the sort of answer to this puzzle.
And again, it is so, it is infinitely seamless to read. It's just like reading a gorgeous fairy tale that helps you understand the current time. I ran to Google all the time to look up things. And every time I did, it turned out to be a real thing, which was so much fun. And my brain just was exploding with newness. How much of the history and myth and people, how much of it is real and how much is Danielle Trussoni brain?
So first of all, I just want to say that's my favorite thing when people tell me that they were Googling as they were reading. Angelology is like that. That's a novel I wrote. It was published in 2010, and it's full of lore around angels, but a lot of it's taken from actual texts, right? So people would look it up and be like, oh, that's a real thing. So the same with this, everything that's surrounding the imperial family, puzzle boxes, Japan, savant syndrome, the thing that Mike Brink has, all of this stuff is real and it's researched. What's mine is the places where the narrative takes over and those bridges that connect these things together and the conclusions that I come to.
And the conclusions that you come to, and I want to talk about that in a minute, because really powerful, big conclusions. But I was fascinated by one of the characters, Ogawa, who was the designer of the puzzle box, because again, that brain and that skill is so terrifying. Was that a real person, and where did you come up with him?
So there was a man named Ruichi Ogawa who was an early puzzle constructor. I took that name and the basics of that biography from a real person. And in the book, obviously I don't know anything about him. There's no records of who he was, who he really was, other than he built some puzzle boxes 100 years ago. I made him into a kind of sadistic mastermind who built this puzzle box. So, this puzzle box is small, but the one that Ogawa built is a little bit bigger. It's, I think, a foot by a foot. So, and he designed it with the intention of killing whoever tried to open it. Most puzzles, the constructor wants you to open it. They want you to solve it, right? It's like an author, right? We write a book because we want you to read it and we want you to enjoy it. A puzzle constructor, and I learned this because I work with 2 puzzle constructors actually, and they're the ones who make the puzzles in the book. They've told a couple of them, 2 of them have told me, we would never make something that's unsolvable. Right? That doesn't make sense for us to make something that's unsolvable. But this guy did. He wanted to kill you before you opened it. And there was a reason for that in the book.
And it's so good. So you gave me chills. I was going to ask you about the puzzles in the book. There are actual puzzles in the books that we see. You don't have to try to figure them out, you all. You can just look at it and love them. But so you worked with puzzle people to make those puzzles. What was that like? And what did you ask them for?
So it was an amazing experience. I started talking with Will Shortz, who I mentioned in the book in the beginning. He was the editor of the New York Times Games page, and he was my first insight into what that kind of mind was like, because mine is not like that, right? Like I am very much
like Will Shortz.
No, yeah, I'm very much not mathematical or really logical. In that way. So he brought me to his home, showed me his puzzle library, talked to me about his life and how he experiences the world. And he, through him, I was really able to get a picture of what Mike Brink could be. But then even more important is he introduced me to 2 of the puzzle constructors who had worked for him at the New York Times. And these guys are geniuses. One does the word puzzles that are in my books, and the other does the math puzzles that are in my books. And working with them was a dream. Basically, I would write the story and then I would be like, we need a puzzle right here that has this kind of solution. And I would send that off to one of them. And, the next day they would come back with this elaborate, gorgeous puzzle. And I'd be like, oh my God, you're amazing.
That was, we're talking about the puzzle box, you all, if you hadn't figured that out from the conversation, by the fabulous Danielle Trussoni. Absolutely a marvelous book. And she's working with puzzle people to create some of the puzzles that are in the book. Again, you don't have to figure out the puzzles. You can just.
No, actually they're kind of beautiful visual elements. And it was a really interesting for the audiobook because people can't see them, right? So, and you don't want to explain each step in an audiobook. So I always write the story around so you can do it or not do it.
Yes, and for those of us, I can do some puzzles, but nothing that has anything to do with numbers. Let me just say. I was happy to see that. So Mike Brink, who has got to be one of my favorite heroes ever, is he based on Will Shortz, or is he based on someone else, or is he completely a creation of your imagination?
He's completely a creation of my imagination. I created him first, his physicality and the savant syndrome, before I talked to Will Shortz. But I've been fascinated by that kind of brain for a long time. I have a son who, when he was in kindergarten, had a photographic memory, and I still remember being amazed. He would look at something for a minute and he would be able to copy the whole thing, for his homework without looking back. And I was just like, what's going on?
When it went away, you said he had it.
Well, maybe it's still there. He doesn't really use it in that way. Like, it's not something, although he tests he's one of those kids, he can he's now in college, and he can take like a SAT or an ACT test and get a perfect score. So it's clearly still there. He reads something and he retains it, but he isn't using it in the way that Mike Brink is.
Nobody uses it in the way that Mike Brink is.
Yeah.
He's completely great. Let me read you a quote from People magazine, and then I want to talk to you a little bit about that. People magazine says, a fun Da Vinci Code blend of puzzles, mysticism, and high octane action. And I loved the Da Vinci Code, and I adore Dan Brown. You know him, right? He's a genius.
Yeah, he's a genius.
And adorable in every way. And it has puzzles, and it has mysticism, and it has high octane action, and it is fun. It is a nonstop fun book. But see, Danielle, there's always more in your Puzzle Master books than just there is the fun, high octane thrill ride, can't put it down, page turning book. But underneath that, there is always, in the Puzzle Master and the Puzzle Box, was, as you said, you can read separately. There's a bigger philosophical, thematic element, which is one of the things that I think makes your books so special. There's the revealing of a way of thinking, or that's, inspirational, thought-provoking, life-changing in every one of your books. Can you talk a little bit about why you do that, and why that sort of, when a thriller, I'll say this, when a thriller brings tears to your eyes at the end, that's when the reader knows that something has really been touched. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I think so. There's two things here. One, the sort of larger thematic plans, that I have for each of the books is something that's really important to me. I think it's in all those, that element of needing to have something of the real world and of my feelings about things happening in the real world in the books. Is just who I am as a writer. It started with my first book, Falling Through the Earth, which was a memoir about my relationship with my dad, who was a Vietnam vet. And the thematic element was about trauma in families, post-traumatic stress, and that sort of thing, right? And so every one of my books, even if it's a high-octane thriller and it's tons of fun, there will be an element of, I don't want to say something political, but it's a way that I see the world, mm-hmm. and that I think other people could see as well and find interesting. But the other element that you talk about with Mike Brink and his journey, which is what brought tears to my eyes as I wrote that ending, and I'm glad to hear that it did when you read it, is there's an existential question at the heart of the series. And I frame it through Mike Brink, and it's about what does it mean to be content? What does it mean? What do we need to do with all of the things we have to be happy? And, just to demonstrate that, Mike Brink has this incredible gift. From the outside, he looks like he's famous. He's not wealthy, but his puzzle making is a good job. He's on television. He's handsome. On the outside, he would look like he has everything. Inside, he's traumatized by this disorder, and he's struggling to find ways to connect with people. And so the question that I wanted to explore in this series with him is, what's that point that we need to just be happy with what we've got? And that's his main question, and his real quest as a character is finding a way to just be happy and to have those connections with people.
You see, you all, what a fantastic book this is. In every way, you will be intrigued and enchanted and immersed and propelled through this novel. And in the end, I hope you love it as much as I do. It is quite a life-changing book, philosophically, emotionally, intellectually, and also sort of contemporary Japanese politics, which I will let you find for yourself. But it will also make you wonder about some things. Am I being obscure enough?
Well, that's good. I don't think you could go too much
exactly
too much deeper into it.
You read The Puzzle Box by Danielle Trussoni. Let me take a couple of questions before we get to the Wheel of Fun. Margaret is in the back room fielding the questions. Kathy, hi Kathy, says beautiful and intricate cover. Yes, indeed. Remember, it's called The Puzzle Box, which is about the dragon box. Tell us more about the cover and the colors as well.
So the cover was designed by a really wonderful cover designer artist at named Carlos Belkin, I believe his last name is. And I don't know, he just nailed it. It was one of the first covers that I saw, which is kind of amazing. I don't know if this happens to you, Hank, but there's often many covers that you go through and like trying to find the right one. And Carlos sent that one and we were like, whoa, he nailed it. I love that, one of the opening puzzles in the book is called the chrysanthemum puzzle. And it sort of is the opening invitation for him to go to Japan. And so I love that there's chrysanthemums and I love the color scheme. I like the purple and yellow. I don't know. I feel like he really nailed it. I really love it.
Well, with the chrysanthemum yellow and imperial purple, it's really gorgeous and it looks very intricate. Great question, Kathy. Who else has a question? Are there going to be more puzzle books, says Shannon, asking Shannon Hansen is Shanson to us, asking the question that we're all asking.
I hope so. Yes, I have another one planned. I have to just get down and get to work.
Well, not
back to my desk.
Wait 2 more seconds. We're pushing you on that. Who else has a question? I see Sue Street says, I'm going to purchase both your books. This is right up my alley. I love puzzles and learning true history in a book like The Da Vinci Code. Good question, Betty. Would you recommend reading The Puzzle Master first?
I think you could read either of them. The Puzzle Master, there's one character in the series, Jameson Sedge, who has, if you read the second book first, you'll know more about him than you will in the first book. But I don't think that matters. Jordy from Jordy's Book Club wrote a review that I just loved because he said, in the way that people read the Da Vinci Code before they read Angels and Demons, this feels the same, that you could read the second book and then go back to the first book. They're really written as standalone books.
And it's a tiny bit of a different book when you know what it is, but it doesn't really easily read them in any order, easily and happily, gorgeously read them in any order. One last question. Can you show us any images from when you saw the puzzle boxes being made? Or can you tell us a little bit more about where you saw puzzle boxes being made? Is it like a crafts room with little...
That, you know what, I will post some, look for me on Instagram or on Facebook, because I will post some of those pictures. I have some, I just don't have them right now so that I can hold it up. If I wish I did, actually. But so Hakone is this beautiful small village in the mountains of Japan that has an ancestral forest. So it has these just like ancient trees, huge wood trees. And they used those woods, I think it's 7 or 8 different kinds of wood, to make these puzzle boxes. And the place that I went, it's now a puzzle box museum, but in one part of it, they have an area where they're actually constructing puzzle boxes. So they have all the different kinds of wood sort of laid out for you. They show you the tools. And I got to watch as people put them together. So it was fascinating, and it really changed my perspective about what Mike Brink would be dealing with, right? Like if you imagine it at first, it's hard to understand how tactile and how it would feel to do that, but actually seeing it really, really helped.
And you wrote it so gorgeously. Mike Brink undoing the box is so tactile, and you can just almost, feel the wood even through his leather gloves, and feel the tension and feel the danger and feel the risks that he is undertaking to win this prize for his brain almost. Who knows what's going to happen as a result. Anyway, while we are out of time, I hope we have tantalized you into being able to run, click, 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 and get the puzzle box. One of you will walk away with it today. Let us spin the fabulous wheel of fun and see how many people are here who have entered to win a copy of this book. And we will spin the wheel of fun. Isn't this great? It shows that it is Susie Baldwin. That is marvelous. Susie Baldwin. Have you met Susie Baldwin, Danielle?
No, I haven't.
You would love her. She is completely great. They live in Seattle, on that Bainbridge Island in Seattle, I think, and it's gorgeous, and she and her husband are marvelous world travelers and big readers. So you two would have a lot of connections, which will start with the puzzle box. So Susie, you will get some info to email me, and I will email our executive producer, and she will email Danielle's publicist, and then you will get the book.
Because you will get it soon.
you will get it, because that is how it works. No puzzle about that. Danielle, stand by for just 1 minute while I say to all of you, next week at 4 p.m. ET, be here for a completely different kind of novel. We will be reading from we will be talking to Stephanie Robel about The Hitchcock Hotel. And I'm telling you, look at the cover of this. The Hitchcock Hotel with a bathtub with what's clearly blood seeping is the word I'm looking for, blood seeping into the letters. That is about as creepy as it gets with The Raven. Alfred Hitchcock, Stephanie Robel. Stephanie will be here next week, just in time for Halloween, to talk about her book. Meantime, today we have just talked to the fabulous Danielle Trussoni about her marvelous The Puzzle Box. So run, click, 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 and get this book. Danielle, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Hank. This was such a good interview. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. I enjoyed it too. Thank you. You know I'm such a fan. You all, I am a fan of yours as well. I love, love, love when you join us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. So be back here next Thursday. Nope, don't be here Thursday, because I won't be here. Next Tuesday at 4 p.m. ET to hear The Hitchcock Hotel. And until that, remember, it is always safe inside a book. And we'll see you next time. Love you.